sometimes it feels like it's very hard to get wisdom.
Well, and I think this is especially frustrating to Job at the moment, because he wants to understand why he's suffering and he's not getting any answers. And his friends have not been helpful either. And I think this is what he means at the moment when he says, this wisdom is so difficult to find. And this is the very thing you will experience is when you're in a difficult situation, you want help for that situation. And I believe a lot of times God on purpose says, I'm going to remove all answers. You don't get them. Because God's wanting to see, will you worship me when you don't have the answers, when you don't understand what I'm doing? And, if I go to the doctor and he says, you've got gangrene on your arm, we're going to have to cut it off right here. And then they start cutting. I understand at least why they're cutting off my arm, right? But if somebody starts cutting off your arm and you have no reason to understand why it's happening, your hand's fine, you're going to be really upset. And God is like, so when I start cutting off your arm and you know it's me, can you let me do it or not? I mean, that's a horrible example, but it brings home the point, I guess. Job 29 is labeled in my Bible Job's summary defense. Okay, so, and after this summary defense, his friends are done. They don't speak anymore. This is actually quite long. It goes to the beginning of 32, and we're not going to cover all that, but we'll just cover a piece of it. I think it's easiest if we just read it through in the Bible. 29:2. Oh, that I were as in the months of old, in the days when God watched over me. And what he does is he describes how wonderful life was. It was like I was bathing in milk, and he says, and I treated everybody nicely, and everybody came to me and asked for advice. And when I spoke in counsel, the elders would all stand up out of respect for what I was saying. Verse 10, the voice of the nobles was hushed and their tongue stuck to the roof of their mouth. Just keep in mind, Job was like not only the richest man in his area, but he was the most respected man in his area. His words were good, and he was also the most respected in the sense, if a widow went to him and said, I need your help, she knew she would get help. And if the orphan went to him and said, I need your help, they would get it. And if someone was homeless and knocked on his door, they would get clothing and food. So he recalls all of this. And like now in verse 30, he's spent chapter 29 talking about how much respect he had before. And now in 30, but now they laugh at me. Men who are younger than I, whose fathers I would have disdained to set with the dogs of my flock. So get this. Young men are coming to him and cursing him, showing disrespect, spitting in his face. And Job's going, these guys are so low, I would not have asked their fathers to take care of my dogs. Okay, and so he's really showing what a jump. He goes from the king stand up when I speak to the untouchables are spitting in my face and getting away with it. They make songs about him, he says in 9, and now I have become their song. I am a byword to them. And then he again repeats how much pain he's in. And let's look at chapter 31. This is a bit of a help to show how blameless he was. Okay, and remember, he held on to it. He didn't let go. 31. I've made a covenant with my eyes. How then could I gaze at a virgin? So, he doesn't give us a lot of detail, but he picks up on Jesus's comment regarding lust, and he says it's not just about adultery, but it's about your heart. And Job, long before Jesus interprets what God wanted when he gave the law, Job basically says, I understood it from the beginning. Okay? And so, like I said, we don't know what's the agreement Job made. You know, did he say, I'm never going to stare lustfully? I have a hard time thinking he said, I'm never going to look at a woman, you know, or look at a young girl. That doesn't make total sense to me. But he did have a covenant with his eyes, and he's like, I kept it too, you know. What would my portion be from God above and my heritage from the Almighty on high? And then, verse 5, if I have walked with falsehood, and my foot has hastened to deceit, let me be weighed in a just balance, and let God know my integrity. If my step has turned aside from the way, and my heart has gone after my eyes, if any spot has stuck to my hands, then let me sow and another eat, and let what grows for me be rooted out. So basically he says, God, if I did that, punish me, deal it out, let me have it. But I didn't do it, so back off. You know, that my interpretation there. But again, he's just saying, no, I did not walk in falsehood. And then he keeps going. If my heart has been enticed towards a woman, so this is kind of picking up on the covenant thing, and I have lain in wait at my neighbor's door, then let my wife grind, meaning grind the grain, for another, and let others bow down on her. So it's like, let somebody else commit adultery with my wife if I did it to somebody else. And he's saying, I didn't. And he says that would be a heinous crime. Okay? So the people in his time, they knew clearly the differences between lust and adultery and marriage, and that these were not question marks for them.
Before the Mosaic Law came.
Before the Mosaic Law came, if we date Job before the Mosaic Law, which I think we should. And then let's jump to 16. If I have withheld anything that the poor desired. So, and remember what Jesus said? If they ask, give it to them. I don't think that's limitless. At least I don't say yes to everybody that says that. But you have to, when you're saying no, you do have to balance it with, okay, what does Jesus want me to do? You know, if I have withheld anything that the poor desired, or have caused the eyes of the widow to fail, if I have eaten my morsel alone, so what he's saying there is, I always invited others to share my meal with me. I wasn't greedy and just wanted it for myself. Sometimes when people give me chocolate, I do go put it in the cabinet. I'll find it there. If I've seen anyone perish for lack of clothing, or the needy without covering. So when James says, if the needy comes to you and asks, don't send him away empty. Job's like, I'll demonstrate that one for you. That's the way I lived. Yeah. And let's look at verse 29 of chapter 31. If I have rejoiced at the ruin of him who hated me, or exulted when evil overtook him. So what he's saying here is, I'm not into vengeance. I don't rejoice when my enemy is in pain, which is also a biblical principle. And we don't have time to go into it, but it's a very interesting study because there are psalms that say, kill them, Lord, wipe them out, bash their heads in, you know. And so when we're thinking about the enemy, there is a place for that type of wish or prayer. But when we look at such verses, we also must realize, and God talks about that as well, it's like, that's a touchy issue. When you start cursing your enemies or saying, God, seek vengeance on them, you are treading on very dangerous ground in my eyes. That said, there is a place for it, but be careful. Be very careful. Yeah.
Some prophets also used to pray for, how to say, that God would execute judgment upon them. For
Yes.
example, Nehemiah.
Yes.
And yeah, but it depends. Of course.
So, you know where I think the difference is, if I just mentioned it quickly? I think the difference is when God would speak through a person and the words of cursing or whatever are actually, and you said it, they're the words of a judgment from God. Then that's fine, because God has the right to do that. But when I'm pronouncing the judgment on the person driving slow in front of me, and I'm driving and I go, yeah, why is he driving so slow? It would be far better that I say, Lord, bless that patient, slow person, you know. Okay, so we have fast forwarded through Job and his friends.